This is part 2 of MARC. Know that there are separate MARC boxes to hold different kinds of data. Because there are only 999 options for 3-digit numbers to serve as MARC tags, the different boxes may use the same numbers to mean different things. When the numbers are put in one of the MARC boxes, the box knows that its numbers mean different things than another box's numbers. This photo is from the Technical Services Department's reference section in the music library. Because music had its own distinctive MARC tags, we've kept the US MARC format to be able to reference it. For example, prior to MARC 21, special objects like sound recordings in the US had independent tags for some areas of description, such as publication information, contained in a MARC field with a tag that begins with a 26X. Instead of a MARC 260 tag, which now has been superseded by 264, the 262 MARC tag was used for that data, only for sound recordings. The same went for the physical description, where a 305 tag was used instead of a 300. Within each, the subfields did not match their print counterparts either. You can see how the application of tags for fields and subfields have changed over time. As I suggested earlier, US MARC had distinct fields for many formats, separate from books. You will encounter the old tags as you encounter existing descriptive records, but you will use the current tags as you create those records. Out in the field, if you are cataloging, you may also update records to use current guidelines with current MARC tags. That kind of work is commonly referred to as data cleanup, bringing database content up to code, so to speak. There are separate MARC boxes for different types of data content. There is a MARC box for descriptive data in a bibliographic record. There is a MARC box for authorized data that brings together the same or similar things under a single phrase. There is a MARC box for the data that indicates that your library holds a particular manifestation in its collection. But then there are proprietary boxes that belong to the Integrated Library System, or ILS, that you use. Those boxes live outside of MARC, but contain information related specifically to the item you hold in your hand. All of these are connected to each other through the underlying relational database. The official version of MARC 21 is available from the U.S. Library of Congress. The website for it is loc.gov/MARC. Within each format is a formal description of each field and subfield, as well as regulations for specific content, instructions for layout, and a history of changes. OCLC maintains a descriptive listing of MARC and how it is specifically implemented in WorldCat. That listing is called Bibliographic Formats and Standards and is often called BIB formats in conversation. There are some minor differences between MARC 21 and OCLC MARC, and they are noted when it happens, but there aren't many and you may never run into most of them. A great example of a difference you will see between the two is the encoding level. In official MARC, the Library of Congress uses a blank to represent that a descriptive record has been created at the fullest level. But only the Library of Congress and Program for Cooperative Cataloging participants may use a blank encoding level. OCLC participants that are not the Library of Congress or are not creating records at the same full level as LC or the PCC use a capital I. The same is true for minimal level records. If created by the Library of Congress, they will use a 7. If created by other OCLC participants, they will use a K. In conversation, you will hear I level, K level, etc. Do know that the OCLC specific encoding level codes are actually going away in the future. They'll be transferred and translated into the Library of Congress codes that are the closest. So though the LC site shows us the most official usage of MARC, in practice we mostly refer to BIB formats because it has more readable descriptions in many places. It also has a lot of examples of input that help us see how to apply MARC. The LC site shows us what is currently accepted for use by the Library of Congress itself, where bib formats can show us even the fields and subfields that are available, even if not in use by the Library of Congress. That is because WorldCat can be used by any institution and is not restricted to only one library. Because we follow what the Library of Congress does and mimic their practice, we should refer to the officially accepted MARC fields, but you may find that local practices allow some leeway. And MARC is a fluid thing, meaning that new fields continue to be developed, so it is always good practice to refer to the documentation even if you already feel like you know it. It is also important to note that we do not catalog by example, so even though there are examples shown, it is imperative that we follow the guidelines directly. Different formats of resources have required different application of content in the past, and bib formats helps us with that more directly. BKS for books, RAC for recordings, VIS for visual materials, etc., where it applies. It may also differ between integrated library systems. A great example of that is the 041 field. Officially, the 041 field has subfields in it that may be used in specific situations or may not be used in other situations. The system that you use could be programmed to only accept whether it has or does not have a certain subfield. So for example, the 041, for example, when creating a record in OCLC connection for a sound recording, I would not use a subfield A in a 041 field. The subfield A refers to specifically the language of the text in a book, the lyrics in printed music, or a soundtrack on a movie. It does not apply to the language of the lyrics sung in a recording. That subfield is only required if it applies to the format you are describing. However, in my previous job, the local system required the subfield A for every single descriptive record, no matter what. In connection, leaving that out was fine, and I would have no trouble adding a new descriptive record because the system is programmed to understand. In the local system, I would not be allowed to add a new descriptive record. So I had to maintain my own set of programming rules specific to my computer to force the system to allow this field that was not required for my work. These are all the MARC fields that apply to the descriptive data we have worked on so far. As we go through the rest of the semester, you'll start to add it in, and we'll start to use more fields, but this will get us started. This is my first inclusion of something called indicators. Indicators supply information about the MARC field for indexing, display, or other system functions. Numbers in the indicator positions have assigned meanings, and in some fields, a blank is meaningful. In the production, publication, distribution, manufacture, and copyright field, the MARC 264 field, the first indicator is blank for monographs, but may have a number for serials like journals or magazines. The second indicator specifies whether it describes the producer, the publisher, the distributor, the manufacturer, or whether it is just a copyright date. And this is the MARC for series. It's the first time we see how two MARC fields connect in some way. The first indicator tells us whether there will be a connecting 8XX field or not. It is interesting to note that the order of subfields differs between the two. Also note that I replaced the last two digits of the 8XX MARC tag. That is because the tag number depends on whether someone or something specific is responsible for the series. But for your next assignment, you are not expected to use a MARC 8XX field. While we start to work with MARC, it may be helpful to visualize it this way. This shows how, in many cases, each piece of data lives inside its own subfield box, and those subfield boxes live inside a field box. One of the limitations of MARC is that it doesn't use enough boxes for every possible piece of data. As you can see, the statement of responsibility and the additional statement of responsibility live inside the same box. Theoretically, there could be separate boxes for each one. When we talked about punctuation last time, we talked about how the punctuation precedes a piece of data. So the punctuation also precedes the box the data lives in. That is why it looks like the punctuation follows the data inside one box, but it is actually just coincidence as it precedes the next box. That is changing, potentially in the future. We have the option now of putting the punctuation inside the box for the data that it precedes. But we will not do that in class. It will be at the end of the box that precedes the next box. Of course, as you can see in subfield C within a 245 field, there are actually two pieces of informational data that live there, separated by punctuation. We will see that happen a lot. So that is about as quick and dirty as it can get for explaining MARC. There is so much history with it, so many useful things about it, and plenty of room for improvement. There are 35,964 possible MARC subfield boxes in a descriptive bibliographic record, and only a small percentage have been defined. So I don't forget, I added links to the Library of Congress MARC website and OCLC's bibliographic formats and standards to the reading list for this week. I'm sure you will want to have them bookmarked as you work through everything this semester.